My name's Justine Froelker, and I'm not sure I've ever been more nervous for a pop-up courage workshop. um, and I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. Whenever I feel, if you followed me for any amount of time, you know how I feel about nudges. And I got this nudge like a week or so ago when I was texting with one of my friends when I was on sabbatical, and I was like, there's my first like free pop-up workshop that I need to do. Thank you for your help on that. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Justine Froelker. I am a licensed professional counselor. I am an author, speaker, corporate trainer, and certified Daring Way and Dare to Lead Facilitator, which is based off of the work of Dr. Brené Brown. And I teach courage for a living, and I get to do it really across all formats, and right now virtually, which is a gift. And I also miss you all at the same time. And so today I'm going to kind of just talk and teach. And I encourage you, if you have like a question or something that you want me to address, you can type it in the Zoom chat. And then I'll come back to Facebook and answer it, unless maybe someone on my team, Barbara, Raylene, will you put that in the chat box? There's questions on the Facebook feed. But like today, I just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about this weird place that we are in. The world is trying to figure out how to open up, and I'm a therapist by trade, which just basically means that I've taught people how to communicate more effectively. And especially for the last over 7 years, I have the background in the courage work, and so it really gives me even more language. And so I wanted to offer you they're almost scripts. To be honest, I've always taught clients that, like, it's okay to have a script in your back pocket to say. It's okay to have something that you kind of have in, like, close to your heart, that you can kind of say, okay, I'm going to hear Justine in my head, and this is how I'm going to say this because I don't know what else to say. And so nothing like jumping back into my life after a 2-week sabbatical. Yesterday, I had a 2-hour workshop with over 100 people on it. And then today I'm doing a really scary workshop for me. But I think that's just because I also know how important that this topic is. So my first ask is that inevitably through today's teach, your brain is going to get real uncomfortable. And your brain, I almost guarantee it, for a lot of you, will want to like jump in with judging me and like make up this story that you think you know how I feel about what's happening in the world and what my opinion is. You might even feel called to start typing in a comment and throwing me like a headline or your opinion and trying to convince me to think and believe like you. And so my first ask of you today for today's teach is that when you start to feel that, ugh, or your brain kind of jumping real in with that judgment, because yeah, I got it too. Like every time we walk the dogs, Chad and my husband and I walk the dogs, like a judgment will shoot out of my mouth. It'll shoot out of my mouth so fast. And Chad's like, didn't you just teach on that today? I was like, yeah, I did. But like our brains are wired to stay comfortable. Our brains are wired to keep us safe. And in this crazy, weird, wild, difficult, full of pretty amazing things too at the same time, season, time, whatever world that we're living in, when you start to feel uncomfortable or get triggered by emotion, your brain will find it really easy to jump in and judge the other person, because that feels safer than stopping and dealing with and asking yourself what it's bringing up for you. And so my first ask of you for these next 25 minutes now is that when you kind of want to like jump in and judge me or assume that you know, or that you know how I feel about what's going on in the world, I want you to pause. I want you to take a breath. And I want you to really stop and ask yourself, what's that bringing up for you? What's the story you're making up? What's it really about? I want you to choose courage over comfort, as we say in the curriculum that I teach. I want you to lean into that vulnerability and kind of just take a breath and maybe receive what maybe you need to receive from today's teach. So one, you're going to want to judge me because I want to judge everybody right now. It's just what we want to do. Just go to the grocery store. Okay. The other piece, my second ask, I'm going to ask you for your grace because I'm going to mess this up because there's no such thing because I'm super nervous. My heart is pounding, my belly is churning, and my palms are sweating. I am hooked by emotion right now. That's why I took a lot of deep breaths. It's why I checked my truth. It's why I wrote down the story before I pushed go live. And I reminded myself, like, I'm nervous, be care. I care what you think of what I teach you. I care what you think of me, because if I did not care, I would have no capacity to connect with you. I will not be defined by what you think of me. Because when I am defined by what you think of me, I lose all capacity to be all of me. I lose all capacity for my courage. And right now, especially, I feel like I've been saying this for over 2 months, like right now, during the time that the world is living through. And it just it seems to be getting more and more and more important. The world needs us to grab our courage, to get uncomfortable, and to choose grace. And so today, what we're going to talk about is just like some curious language about how to navigate some of these tough conversations that are going to be coming up as the world begins to open up. And what I hope to provide for you is language, and then most of all, to model the work for you, to model the words for you and give you an example. And so right now, one of the biggest reminders that a lot of us need is to remember that we only know what we know right now in this second. You cannot know what's coming. You need to stop and pause and learn from your past, and then also probably let it go and forgive and heal. But we only know what we know right now. And most likely what we know, especially when it comes to other people's lives or other people that we are seeing in person, or in public, like at the grocery store, on a walk with the dogs, you probably don't know the full story. Like even just the other day, we were walking the dogs, and our neighbor across the street, they were having a nice little party, and it was loud. And I was like, that's a lot of cars. And of course, my brain, immediate judgment, right? Because I wasn't, my brain just went automatically to stay safe. And so I'm going to judge them right away versus pausing and getting curious about what that's bringing up for me, my own emotions. And so we're going to talk about that. So we only know what we know right now. We probably don't know the full story. I almost guarantee you don't know the full story unless you live with that person, and unless you're really great with communication, which a lot of us could use improvement on, some communication help. But so don't assume that you know the reasoning behind how someone feels about what's going on in the world. Don't assume that you understand or know why they're doing what they're doing, because when we assume, we're living from unspoken expectations, and the unspoken's never benign, ever. We need to speak it. We need to ask. We need to seek to understand. And so, we have people from lots of states, at least that registered for the workshop, and who knows who's watching on Facebook, because I cannot necessarily see that right now, but at this point, every state's in a different, place for reopening. And at that point, every county is too. Every county has different guidelines, it feels like. And so we have guidelines, we have rules. We have people who are rule followers. We have people who are not rule followers. We have people who will follow the rules, but not certain rules. And so it doesn't mean that everyone's going to follow these guidelines. These guidelines, they don't feel black and white. They feel like they're constantly changing all of the time. And you may not know someone's full story. And so as we kind of navigate reopening, I think one of the other pieces, because I'm an example of this, also give yourself grace and permission that the way you feel about what is happening in the world, the way you feel about certain guidelines, will probably change. It has for me. I was on full quarantine, like nothing, nobody for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I don't know, now for me, my quality of life and seeing some of my people is worth the risk with safety precautions, right? To see them. And so that's something that only you get to decide. Only you and your family gets to decide that. And so one of the things that has been helpful is that, and I've taught this in all of my workshops, you might, like right then when I said that, you're like, oh my gosh, she's seeing people. And I've even said, I've met a friend for a walk. And I'm going to tell you some of these examples of what brought up this topic for this workshop. But like the definition of integrity that we use in Brené's research, that our curriculum that I teach, is integrity is choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, and easy. And I've used this example a lot on social media and in a lot of my workshops, but like, your definition of what is right could be very different than what is my definition of right. Right now, it doesn't take you any time to get on social media and see a post about wearing masks. Some people are wearing masks everywhere they go. Some people are wearing masks nowhere. And everyone has an opinion about it, and there are lots and lots of feelings about it. Your definition of what is right might be very different than what my definition of what is right. Around masks, we can use that example. As someone who wants to live with courage, as someone who does not want to always react from her emotions, especially when those emotions are fear and anxiety and judgment, I want to stop and pause. And if you think differently about wearing a mask than I do, I want to sit beside you and seek to understand how come you feel that way. And so no matter what side of the issues you are on, no matter where you fall in this world full of opinions and lots of feelings that most of us are just not talking about in a healthy way, curiosity and courage is what will help us navigate it. And so I have a couple stories that like brought this up. My first one was a couple weeks ago. I texted my best friend and I was like, could we pick up some barbecue? We don't have any good barbecue by our house. And they have really good barbecue. And so I was like, could we pick up some barbecue and come sit outside and see you guys? Social distance, sit outside, pick up takeout, which we have been okay with. We've been comfortable for us. We've been comfortable with picking up takeout. Some families have not. And so, and my best friend was like, yes, please. And so we show up at her house and I knew how she felt about this. However, because I want to practice what this work looks like and I want to model it everywhere I go. When we got there, I opened the door and I was like, do you want us to like leave our bags in the garage? Like, do you want us to walk around to the backyard, or is it okay in the house? And she looked at me, she was like, oh my gosh, just come in the house. And I was like, okay, I'm just checking. And so it's that, how do we navigate these tough conversations? This week I met a friend for a walk and I looked at her. I knew she's been on a strict quarantine like I have, and she lives alone for the most part. And I looked at her and I just asked, I go, do you want a hug? Like, are you okay with a hug? And her eyes got big and she goes, oh my gosh, yes, please. Like, it's asking these questions from this place of no judgment, without expectation, and a whole lot of grace. Because I've also been on the other side. I had another girlfriend that we were going to meet and sit outside, but it's been raining like nonstop here in St. Louis. And she texted me and she goes, well, we're open in our county. Do you want to come meet at a coffee shop? And I texted her back and I said, I'm not ready to sit in a restaurant yet. And she goes, I get it. Like, I totally get it. I had no expectations. I was like, can we like reschedule when it's not raining? I've also, when my husband's needed to go into the office, one of my questions to him has been, who's going to be there with you? What's your plan? It's being able to have these conversations and then like sit down and sit beside one another and say like, can you tell me more about how come you feel that way about masks? Or how come you feel this way about medication or the vaccine, if you really want to? That's a risky one conversation to get into, but like to have these curious conversations, to let go of labeling people as entitled, or they don't care about the greater good because they're not wearing a mask. What would it be like for you to stop? And if you have a relationship with them, stop and seek to understand how come they believe that way. Can you tell me more? Can you help me understand what's made you feel this way about this? And if you don't know them and you feel yourself jumping in with that judgment or the label that they're a crappy human being, or maybe you're of the mindset that the people with the masks and the gloves are being ridiculous. What if instead you stopped and paused, and rather than attaching to that judgment because it feels safer than getting curious about your emotions, you took a breath, you got your thinking brain back on track to stop reacting from your emotions, and you asked yourself, what is this bringing up for me? What's this really about? Because when we were walking the dogs and I saw and I heard that party, and then the neighbors were having all those people over, and I wanted to jump to that judgment, and I even said out of my mouth, like, that's a lot of cars. Oh my gosh. And I was like, I took a breath and I was like, I miss my people. I want to have a party. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it yet. Man, they probably have somebody who just graduated. Like, to really stop and pause and connect with what is the human experience. That none of us have ever done this before. We have no idea what we are doing. We all have lots of opinions and tons of feelings about it. And a lot of us don't have a lot of tools or language to navigate all those feelings and the conversations around those opinions. And so some of the language that I want to give you, and like if you are a note taker, this is where you take notes. So I'm going to, like, when your brain goes into that judgment, your brain goes into labeling someone as too scared or so anxious or so OCD, or goes into that label of like, gosh, they don't even care about humanity. Why aren't they doing, or they're not following the rules, things like that. One, you're going to pause. Judgment, I know, feels easier because being triggered by emotion is not comfortable. Judgment, shaming, and blaming is never courageous. And it will never create sustainable change. Shaming and judging and blaming people and trying to convince them to think and believe like you will not actually get them to think and believe like you. Sitting beside someone and seeking to understand them, that's human connection. And that is where healing and growth happen. Shame and judgment and blame and convincing is not connection. And healing and growth never takes place in disconnection. So to really let go of the judgment, to also, and this one can be hard for me because I am a natural blamer, to drop defensiveness. When someone comes at you, to try to seek to understand you, hopefully with curious language, to drop your own defensiveness. We don't need to defend how we think and feel. Maybe it's just a semantics shift, but like I want to be seen and known and loved and understood. That's every human being's inherent need. And so when I explain where I'm coming from and not defending where I'm coming from, it's more likely to be understood. And so some of your language is, so first off, you've heard me say this multiple times already today, and I say in a lot of my lunch breaks of courage, for me. For me. For me, this is what is working. For me, I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. For me, I'm not ready. For me, I am. Are you ready for this? Like, for me, own your part. The only thing you have control over is how you think, feel, and behave. That's it. Own your part. For me. And then there's pieces like, like, how come? I do not like the word why. That's counseling 101. Those of us who have been to graduate school to be counselors or therapists or social workers, we've been taught to not use the word why. I've written blog posts on this and I've done teaches on this. The word why, when we are toddlers, is all about curiosity. Think about it. Why, Mom? Why? 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 What's that? Why, Mom? Why? It's all about like learning about our world. And then somewhere, I think it's like around age 4, because I feel like 4-year-olds are awesome and they turn into like little humans at 4-year-olds. Of course, I've never raised my own, so, but still, I love 4-year-olds. But like that, somewhere around 4 is when that it shifts to, why'd you do that? Why are you crying? And it becomes this thing that we have to defend who we are. And I believe, as someone who's worked in mental health for a very long time and now have taught this courage work for a long time, I believe that only gets worse. When you come at yourself or to someone else with the word why, they pick up a defense. They feel like they need to defend how they feel or why they did that. So switch out the word why, both in your self-talk and when you're seeking to understand how someone feels. Switch it out with how come? What's that about? Other language starters are things like, tell me more. Can you help me understand what you've read about the vaccine that makes you feel so sure about this, how you feel about it? Can you tell me more? Help me understand. We stay away from words like why and you, like you did this, you feel this way, you're being ridiculous. You made me feel this way. I'm in charge of my emotions. You don't make me feel anyway. I choose how I feel. And so like to drop defenses, to drop expectations. And if you're going to choose to have expectations of how someone is behaving or someone that you're going to meet with or what's happening in your office, maybe you need to state those expectations clearly and out loud and probably multiple times. Because even though we're on semi-quarantine still, we are overstimulated with a ton of information. And so if you are a leader in your home or at work, to state those expectations clearly with curious language. If someone has done something that is not okay, seek to understand where they're coming from. And also check your own stuff. What's it bringing up for you? How come that is not okay with you? Seek to understand how come it is okay with them. And so the biggest piece outside of that language is really just that it's the therapy stuff. When you feel yourself getting hooked, triggered, angsty, judgy, blamey, shaming, you want to rail on someone on social media and tell them exactly why they're wrong. You stop. You take a breath. Because when you are hooked by emotion, your rational thinking brain isn't firing awesomely. Your emotions are writing the story. And when our emotions write the story, we usually leave a trail of hurt people behind us. Because we are feeling beings who sometimes think. Our emotions get first crack. And so when you feel that need to convince someone to think like you or to tell them that they are wrong, what would it be like for you to stop, pause, take a deep breath, to pay attention what's coming out of your mouth, pay attention to what's typing out of your fingers, and choose courage. And ask yourself, what's this bringing up for me? What's this really about? And name it. Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Uncertainty? Disappointment? Grief? Name it. And if you need a feelings glossary, message me. I'll get you one. Name it appropriately. Name it correctly. Speak it out loud to someone who has earned the right to hear your story. And then you cope with it in a healthy way. And you stop hurling your stuff onto other people. because that will not help us get through this time. It really only damages our relationships. So we name it, we cope with it, we allow that emotion to move through, and then we rewrite the story. And if you have a relationship with that person and you want to seek to understand how come they believe that way, rather than convince them to think like you, that's courage. And that's what will heal the world. And so, like, own your stuff. I will not rewatch this workshop because I have no idea what I just said. We just have a couple minutes left. If there's any questions, please utilize the chat. If there's any of them that have popped up on Facebook, Raylene, if you could type those into chat, that would be awesome. But like, what I want you most of all to remember is that like you can't give from an empty well. You cannot love and lead others well if you don't love and lead yourself well. And courage means that you get curious about your stuff. Courage means that you own your stuff. Courage means that you seek to understand people who think and believe differently than you and look differently than you. And we do it doing our best to stay out of judgment, even though it feels so freaking automatic. And when we catch ourselves, we pause and stop. And we do it with a whole lot of grace, that people are doing their best. When we know better, we do better. Thank you, Maya Angelou. And that we'll get through this somehow. Together and separate, a little bit separate still, but still together. So name it to tame it on Facebook. Oh, that's good. That has to be a graphic. Okay. If there's no other questions, you can always reach out to me. I'm very easy to find on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I do have a workshop on Wednesday next week. If you would like to explore more about like what makes you who you are, what makes you love and lead in the way that you love and lead. And then also Friday, I have a 4-hour Dare to Lead virtual workshop for Focus St. Louis that I believe registration is still open for. So that's a not-for-profit diversity organization here in St. Louis that is incredible. So we're doing 4 hours virtually. We can do hard things and it will be amazing. So and then of course you can follow me on your favorite platform. If this spoke to you, or if any of the videos that are up on my website or on my YouTube channel speak to you, please share. That's how people discover this work. And if you would like to bring me into your organization for any kind of formatted virtual call, you can reach out through my Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or website. So thank you so much for being here. Oh, I didn't even mention the permission of the and. It's always the permission of the and. Feel more than one thing at the same time. Okay, thank you for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it. We'll send you the recording if you registered. So thank you so much. And I'll see you next week, maybe.